Thank you. Great. All right, and so I'm calling this meeting to order. This is the first meeting of 2022 for the Sustainability Committee. We'll start with the approval of the minutes. Kelly circulated the minutes on Friday, January 21st. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I had a correction.
Okay, Deb.
I think Kelly already got it though, but basically we approved the purchase of 3,000 LED light bulbs late in 2021, not this year, not 2022.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other corrections? I had just a couple small ones. Kelly Stonehorse Green, I looked it up, it's 3 words. We should probably all start to imprint that on our brains. And Deming Way has only 1 M, minor ones. And there was no need for a motion to adjourn, so you can delete that little part of the closing. So if there are no further corrections, then the minutes are approved as corrected. Okay, now we'll move into public comments. We have time for members of the public to make comments, and as is our custom, we limit the comments to 3 minutes per person, and the committee members are not at liberty to respond in any way to the comments tonight, but we may take up your ideas for a future meeting. So I see a bunch of hands going up, and thank you. I'm glad you're here. We'll start with Sturgeon Moritz. Go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Sturgeon. I am a junior at Madison Country Day School, but I live here in Middleton. And I'm here today because of environmental reasons. I oppose the expansion of Maury Airport. Number one, some real good news. I am real happy that it looks like the airport will be moving away from like lead fuels. That's fantastic. Love hearing about that. Also, the expanding of the airport, like the footprint by taking land from Ed Tyler Conservancy or neighboring farm, looks like that probably won't happen maybe because like the community survey sent out seemed a lot of people didn't like that. So that's great news. Real happy about that. But I do not think that this is good enough. First of all, because expanding the east-west runway about 200 to 440 feet, which is the expansion that they're considering maybe, would allow, of course, larger planes to use the airport, which, you know, more carbon emissions, not so hot. Also, getting more hangars in the airport, you know, more planes, more carbon emissions, same deal. Not very good for, of course, the climate crisis that we're, you know, facing right now. But also it's kind of hypocritical because of the really great resolutions that Middleton has raised, you know, commitments towards sustainability. For example, Resolution 2018-32, it outright says the city has been committed to gradually reducing its carbon footprint. That's a pretty solid quote, and it's kind of hypocritical because if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, why would you want to expand an airport? Also, it says low-income residents are often more burdened by energy rates and climate impacts, which is really great. I'm really glad that it acknowledges this. But also, once again, it's hypocritical because the airport expansion will only benefit those who can afford these airplanes. And, you know, medium household income is about $76,011. And, you know, ultralight aircraft, about the cheapest you can buy, that's about $8,000 to $15,000. But those are smaller planes, so they really won't use use this airport runway extension, something that would maybe be like a single engine plane, $15,000 to $100,000, or a multi-engine plane, $75,000 to $300,000. You know, like plus the general maintenance and upkeep. This is something that a lot of community members might not really afford to be able to benefit from, but of course, as it acknowledged, a lot of people could be feeling the impacts of this climate stuff. Also, another quote we got here: youth and future generations will be more severely impacted by climate change, and it is the duty of current leaders to act promptly and resolutely to mitigate climate change for their benefit, which pretty much sums it all up. I'd say I would be greatly appreciative if y'all could stop the expansion of the Maury Airport for these environmental reasons. Thank you very much. Cool.
Thank you very much for being here tonight, Sturgeon, and making that comment. We'll go on next to Bob Owen. And again, just a reminder for those who have joined us later, if you want to make a public comment, go ahead and raise your hand. Bob, you've got 3 minutes. Robert Owen, you're muted. So you can start over.
I'm sorry. I hope you can hear me now. I'm here to support the rewrite of the sustainable purchasing plan by the city, and also the proposal to spend $114,000 for chargers this year. I'd like to support both of those proposals, and that's all I have to say. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Next, we'll go to Kevin Spitler.
Good evening. I'm also going to make my comments brief. I also very much would like to echo Bob's support for the proposed resolution to put $113,655 towards the 2022 effort to build an electrification charging system for the city in multiple locations. It's great that money's available, and the sooner we get that resolution over to the council, the sooner they can approve it and things can happen. And then just an aside, I didn't see Daphne on the call, but in starting to look at school buses, I don't know exactly where the school buses fall in the purview of the city, but there's a lot of communities around the country that are really moving out on converting to electric school buses. And it turns out there's a huge pot of money being managed by the World Resources Institute from the Bezos Earth Fund, somewhere between $37 and $50 million that's going out to communities across the country to replace buses, diesel buses, mostly with electric ones. And if that hasn't been looked into, I think that would be an appropriate place to look for funding. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. The next we'll go to, is it Zantha Salman?
Yeah, I'm Xanthi, and I'm actually here with Sturgeon. So I also go to Madison Country Day School, and I will be discussing another aspect of the Maury Airport expansion. So if another way for the Maury Airport to be more environmentally friendly, which we strongly support, is to use sustainable aviation fuel, which would be a good option if the expansion is inevitable, because it handles carbon footprint concerns of Middleton residents. In the recent survey that the Maury Airport took of Middleton residents, it showed that 2/3 of the residents are concerned that there would be more air pollution in an expansion, and around 70% would be fine with an expansion as long as the current carbon footprint of the airport doesn't increase. Sustainable aviation fuel, which is made from biomass and waste, would mitigate the airport's carbon footprint, so it would be addressing their concerns. And according to energy.gov, sustainable aviation fuel is safe, reliable, and low carbon, and acts the same as regular jet fuel, and it decreases local emissions it would decrease the local emissions by reducing up to 80% of emissions from the plane that would have been there with regular jet fuel. And this is applicable at Maury Airport because they use Cessna planes for rent, and These were recently approved to use sustainable aviation fuel. And sustainable aviation fuel is offered by different fuel companies like the gas station Shell. And while it is more expensive, different companies like AirBP are trying to make it more accessible, and it's worth it for the decrease in the airport's carbon footprint and addressing the concerns of the Middleton residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, Xanthi. And next, the last person I see with the hand up is Carol Phelps. Carol, you have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Well, I would just like to second everything that everyone has said so far. I am also against the airport expansion, and I think the reasons given by Sturgeon and Xanthi were absolutely excellent ones in terms of we do not want to increase climate change, and sustainable airport fuel with aviation fuel would be a very, very good idea. I'd like to second the proposal about putting money towards the electrification and charging infrastructure, and support the idea of electrified school buses. I think all of those points that were brought up this evening are really excellent, and our family totally supports them.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for your public comments. Moving on to the next agenda item. Sorry, I have a terrier. Before we get to the next agenda item, I need to recruit one of the committee members to be the timekeeper for tonight. I was keeping time for the public commenters, but I'd like a volunteer from our committee to step up. Ideally, someone who has not previously been the timekeeper.
I'm happy to do it tonight. Lisa, can I just make one quick point of order?
Yes.
Actually, not a point of order, just one quick comment on the public comments. I love the idea of sustainable airline fuel. I want to just correct that if the runway is expanded at the airport, it gets expanded so that planes can safely land in the ice and snow. That would be maximum like 5,000 feet. In order for larger planes to be included at this airport, the runway would have to be 8,200 feet. There will not be larger planes at our airport. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you for
Thanks.
that. Thanks for that clarification, Katie. Okay, and thank you also for volunteering to be our timekeeper. So next on the agenda, we've got the staff report from Kelly. We have 5 minutes for this, and committee members, you received the written staff report that Kelly prepared on Friday. I hope everyone had a chance to read it and are prepared to ask Kelly any clarifying questions. Are there any questions for Kelly? I see Dick's hand is raised. We'll start with you, Dick. And Bob Owen, your hand is still raised. So if you would, please just lower it. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I really like the idea of using that leftover money, approximately 114,000. We've got even citizens coming and supporting it. The one question I had about charging stations for behind the library, I'm just curious, is there any issues of security or stuff? Because I'm assuming we're just parking vehicles outside there that are not being used. They're like city staff vehicles. Is there any concern about how do you secure this? I assume would be an overnight charging or when nobody's attending it. So I was just curious how that's going to be dealt
Dick,
with.
if it's okay, I'm going to jump in and ask Kelly to address that question when we get to the agenda item number 4, because we have an hour for the discussion of the charging infrastructure and the city fleet, and we only have 5 minutes for the rest of Kelly's report. So if it's okay, will Kelly be prepared to answer that one when we get to item number 4? Does anybody have any other questions for Kelly about the staff report that doesn't pertain to the EV charging and the fleet? I have a couple. One, the shredding events, again, we'll be discussing this later, but I want folks to think about, and Kelly to answer this when we get to the work plan. Can we somehow piggyback a shredding event onto the clean sweep on April 23rd? And then also thinking about the rain barrels, trying to, really turn this into an Earth Day opportunity, is there any way to have the rain barrel sales taking place then as well? And maybe we can hand out information to people on rain gardens from Crystal, who spoke on one of our webinars. And then also, Kelly, think about whether you want us to volunteer to help out at that event. We'll talk about that when we get to the work plan. I had a question about the lead submission, specifically how can we help you with that? Do you need someone to review it, proofread, whatever? Happy to help. And what are the next steps? And is it possible to get a presentation from you about this next month at our meeting?
There's no way you can really help me. It's just I'm waiting on data from outside sources to be able to write the submittals. And I'm not sure I'll be able to prepare a presentation by next month, maybe the following month. I think nothing will be approved for months because they review it and then ask us to clarify things, and then we send it in again. So it's sort of a multi-month process.
Okay. All right. Well, then maybe next month we can, once it's been submitted, we can revisit the question of, do you want to give a presentation? And if so, what would be the appropriate time? And then the last question I had is item 10 in your report the same thing as the system we had talked about procuring to help us gauge whether our actions are having the intended effect of reducing citywide, not just city operations, but citywide energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions?
I'll have to look at what item 10 was.
I think, there you go.
Yes, this is about hiring a service to help us report on our energy use.
And that's what we talked about last year. And it would apply not just, it might start with just the city's usage, but we can add to it.
It'll just be the city's usage.
Is there any opportunity eventually to add modules that would help us track things like how solar installations on homes is affecting our bottom line when it comes to energy usage?
No, that would be separate because we'd have to get that data from our utility, and which I have done that for this year. We had Slipstream help us do a greenhouse gas emissions report citywide, and they looked at scope 1 and scope 2 emissions and also transportation emissions. So we have a fairly decent data point for this past year on our citywide emissions. It's not super hard, but it's something that takes time, and it would be outside the purview of this service.
Okay. All right. Well, at a future meeting, then I think we should talk about this again, because when we voted on whether to expend money to get a system to do this tracking, I know I thought of it as more broad than just our own cities, like a smart system to measure our own city operations and city energy usage. I thought it was going to expand to the community.
We can't really get that information from private businesses because that's a privacy thing.
Okay. Katie's giving us the hook, but I see Kermit has his hand raised. Kermit, do you have a super quick question clarifying for Kelly?
I guess I'll just limit it to being impressed by the Government Alliance on Race and Equity Conference and hoping that we can somehow schedule time for a report back with any highlights. And in particular, I'm of course, in a space where racial justice is climate justice, how can we synthesize and coordinate those issues if there's any? So that's the main thing.
Okay.
And or do we need to approve any money, or is that already covered? Because it's a conference and I'm sure it's not free.
Yeah, that's been covered through a training budget from the planning department. Typically, we use operating budget for other things, other expenses on the trip, but not the conference itself, which is paid for by the city. Just like when I go to a conference, my parking comes out of the sustainability operating budget, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Got it.
Dominic, I saw your hand was raised and then it went down and then went up again. So if you have a quick question, we can take a minute for it. If not,
More or less a follow-up on item 10. Similar question to yours. I can take a couple of my wrinkles offline.
okay, sounds good. All right. Thank you, Kelly, for that report. I find these very helpful to have in advance so I can think about how things connect. So that was great. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. Katie, we have 5 minutes for this. As you may have read in the news, I'm running for Alder in the spring election. And I want to make it very clear that I'm only going to bring this up today. This is the only time I'm going to talk about my candidacy, because I want to avoid even the slightest appearance of using this committee's work to my advantage. In fact, the only reason I'm bringing it up tonight is because I want to make sure that my candidacy doesn't in any way affect our ability to do our work, because we have a lot, as we'll talk about later, we have a lot of work in the calendar year ahead. I've spoken with Mike Davis, and he assured me there's no requirement for me to step down as the chair while I'm a candidate for office. I'd certainly like to continue chairing the committee until my term is up at least, and I'm not worried about the time commitment of remaining chair and also running for office. But we are a team, and so I want to give you all the opportunity to make the decision. So at this time, I'll ask if anyone would like to make a motion that I step down as chair effective immediately and that the vice chair, Kermit Hovey, succeed me as chair. All right, not hearing a motion.
I just gotta,
Dick?
I think you should stay on until you get to the point where if you are elected, and then it'd be a question, would you be like in Katie's role, be obviously somebody from the council has to be on this committee. So I think your role could change dramatically if you get elected. So why not just leave it until after the election and then decide how we want to proceed, how you want to proceed.
Thank you for that, Dick. All right, well, not hearing a motion, we'll consider this settled. I'll continue to chair, and Kermit, you dodged a bullet tonight, my friend.
And I didn't even know you were shooting it tonight. Oh. Announcement
Okay.
from chair was, anyways.
Yeah, all right. So now let's move on, and I'm serious, this is literally the only time I will mention any of this, I promise. Okay, let's move on to our hour-long discussion of the city fleet, EV transition and charging infrastructure discussion and other things. There are really, I see 4 things wrapped up in this agenda item, which is why we have so much time allocated to it. We've got to talk about the 5-year fleet replacement plan and what our next steps are for that, the sustainable purchasing policy and our next steps for that, the charging infrastructure memo that Kelly's got, and Dick had a question specifically related to this concept. And then it felt like I wanted to get some information on the bidding process and estimating costs, because while I think it's great that we have this money available now, I know from working with government contracts that carryover is often frowned upon. And so I just want to make sure I understand like how it is that we go about budgeting. So let's tackle the 5-year fleet replacement plan first, Kelly, if that's okay. I know that Christy, Spencer, and I are, at least last year, when we needed to put together the motion for council's consideration, which, by the way, they didn't pass. The 3 of us made up the subgroup. I know, however, from work that has gone on since then and the feedback or input I've gotten from committee members that Dominic is interested in this topic and has some really good ideas for how to proceed. And then I know that Kermit is engaged through other channels, but it kind of makes sense to me that perhaps he'd be a lead for our committee in this conversation. So one of the things I hope we'll be able to talk about is who's going to take on this activity and work with Mike Davis, the staff, the concerned citizens, a few of whom are on the call with us today, who's going to be working on this activity and what exactly do we envision the activity being? And Kelly, you know more than the rest of us about the timing for when the spreadsheet, the revised plan that the transportation folks came up with and their narrative, when that is going to formally go to the committees for review and comment.
That will be in February. It's been submitted to Mike Davis and he's looked at it, and staff had a meeting last week with the fleet department, engineering, public lands, police, to go through each department and the 5-year vehicles that are coming down the pike for them. And we discussed each vehicle nearly individually. But Mike Davis would like to send this plan to the committees in February, and he's sending it to a lot of the committees, not just the sustainability, to review, because Parks and Rec should see it, Public Works should see it. And I think that one reason for waiting an extra month is that we are planning to meet with MGE. We were going to meet with our utility today, this morning at the mock, to look at how we would wire things, where the charging stations could be located. We were going to have an engineer from MGE there, as well as their head EV person, to talk to us about it. They've done this for other cities quite often. So, but that meeting got canceled because of the snow. And so we were trying to find another time. We haven't solidified it, but I think it'll be in February. And so it would be helpful to talk to them first, I believe, to have all the information that we need. It kind of goes together, the charging infrastructure and the EV plan. So I think everyone was hoping we'd have a little bit more information on that before sending it to committees.
Okay. Is there a possibility, February is a long month, is there a possibility for us to have a joint meeting on our regularly scheduled meeting day with at least one of the other committees, so that we're not talking in isolation from one another? About specifically this plan?
We could try. You mean a separate meeting or just hook up to someone else's agenda?
I would like to hook them into our agenda, or do it like we did with workforce housing, only actually having a quorum of whatever the other committee is. It would be nice to have a quorum, which we didn't for workforce housing.
Who would you want to go in with? Because I think they all have significant vehicles in their budgets.
I guess I would look,
parks, police.
I would look to you for a recommendation. If there's a way, I just want to make sure that we aren't all in our silo preparing comments that are going to conflict with one another, and miss this opportunity to try to find areas in common.
Yeah, I mean, I can check in with that with other staff and committees and chairs. They would have to approve that as well. There's just some coordination we'd have to do. One other way to go about it is that Brad Hopwood, the operations manager, he's a supervisor of the fleet department, and he's willing to come to our meeting in February to go over things, answer any questions, and work with us on selecting vehicles for 2023. The 2022 vehicle purchases are pretty baked, and they've already ordered a lot of them. And they're already making selections right now for 2023 because it takes that much time to get their budget figured out for 2023. So now actually is the time to talk about what's coming down for 2023 and decisions they may make.
Okay. Reactions from members? Dominic?
Yeah, is the fleet replacement cadence based on operating hours of big equipment or mileage of vehicles, or is it based on a calendar cadence? Do you know?
I'm not sure how they make that decision. They do make the fleet replacement way out. Like they have a 25-year, I think, replacement plan, which most cities don't have. But then they revise it a little bit as they go along because they recognize things change drastically year to year. But so they have kind of mapped it out. And I'm not sure what all goes into that. I think that I won't be able to answer many technical mechanic questions or how they make all of their decisions, but it may be useful to have Brad. I'm sure he could answer that.
Okay.
Thanks, Dominic. We'll go to Christy next and then Dick.
Hi, thank you. I like the idea of having Brad at our next month's meeting.
Thank you. Dick? Dick, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry.
Okay.
I second that, what Christy just said. I think trying to have joint meetings and are really hard to schedule, and I think getting this Brad guy to come and ask and respond to our questions is the best way to go.
Okay. Kermit?
I'll be redundant here. Yeah, I think the logistical complications of trying to get meetings in February synchronized. I think we might want to consider a possibility of sitting in on some of the other committee meetings. That might be a way to split the difference where we don't force anybody to change, turn it into big, logisticals production, but we could perhaps provide some presence. And I'm not sure what latitude committees have to invite us to speak as more than just the general public, but that is something I would be curious about exploring. But yeah, I think Brad Hopwood coming in February, and if we could get the current revision of the spreadsheet into our hands so we could have a little time in advance, that would also be a recommendation I'd make.
Okay. Okay.
Can I follow up on that, please?
Sure, go ahead, Dick.
Yeah, I'd say I had an experience with the Water Resources Commission meeting, I don't know, more than a year ago or so. And I think the way we run our meetings, I think we would have to schedule them, ask them to schedule us to be part of a discussion to make it more formal, because otherwise you're not really, you're just a citizen attending. So if you really want to get involved in the discussion of a particular agenda item, I would suggest Lisa or somebody would have to contact their chair and say, this is an agenda item that we're asking you to put on your meeting agenda, and we would like one or two members of the Sustainability Committee to come and participate in that discussion. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Any other reactions from the members or ideas for how to proceed with the review of the fleet replacement plan, the 5-year one? Okay, so right now as it stands, I will reach out to the chairs of select committees. Kelly makes it sound like Mike might send it to everybody, and I don't know that we need to coordinate with everybody, but certainly Public Works and the Police Department, and who else, Kelly?
Public lands and
Public lands.
park and rec and forestry. There's 2 of those committees.
Okay. Okay. And is it going to be Dominic and Kermit, and anyone else want to join Dominic and Kermit in taking the lead on this activity? Okay.
See, and just to, if I may, just to clarify, what are the parameters of this activity? It's a little.
I envision this, Kermit, as being like the conversations we've had, not as a committee subgroup, to talk about what where do we, what do we want to say in our comments on the narrative and the spreadsheet? And as I mentioned, Dominic had submitted some really good ideas in his comments on the Sustainable City Plan, so I'll share those. I do think it, and Kelly, if this is inappropriate, please speak up, but I do think it would be good to involve citizens in this subgroup, just like we've done for others. And I know you've got Bob Owen on at the meeting now, and Kevin Spitler and Dean. You know, perhaps those folks would be interested in being a part of this subgroup, since they have done a lot of the research. Kelly, is there any problem with that?
I don't think so. I can double check. We've had citizens as members of other subgroups for better or worse. I mean, I don't mean better. I don't mean better or worse. I mean,
Always better.
proper
Or not. Okay. I was gonna say, I think in this case it will be for better. Okay, so that sounds like a plan. And Kelly, as soon as you know a date when we might be getting this from Mike, that'll be helpful for me to identify, you know, when are the committee meetings that I need to request. I guess I could wait until Mike sends it out and then immediately respond to those committees. Dick?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, this is a really good idea, and I'm glad we're following through with it. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be an opportunity at the start of the discussion to talk to these committees about our sustainability goals and kind of let them realize that this is important, working towards the big picture. So not besides just selling the idea, let's get a electric fleet vehicle here and all the micromanaging involved with that. Let's get these, if we're going to go to committees and talk with them, let's talk about our bigger sustainability goals for the whole city that we are shepherding along, and make that part of the discussion.
That's an excellent suggestion, and I'll definitely take that when I reach out to the other chairs. Okay, so we have a plan for item 1 of 4. Item 2 is the sustainable purchasing policy, and the next steps for that. Since council didn't approve our recommendation that we hold off on purchases until we could do a review and complete it by January 31st. We don't have to do it by January 31st. And I believe council, when the resolution passed, tasking us basically with doing something that we were going to do anyway, just not with the not coupled with the temporary moratorium on purchases. They did not specify a date for us to complete the review. I think I'm remembering that accurately. So we have time, and this isn't an urgent task, but it is something that we should continue with. I recommend timing it for May to have the resolution that Christy and Spencer and Kelly and I initially started drafting in December as a, to back up our request to council to, hold off on purchases. We put together a draft resolution and then decided, no, we had to go much more quickly and just go with this motion. So I recommend timing our submission of a proposed resolution for council to adopt. I think that should wait until May after a new council is seated, because we will have at least one new member for sure, and maybe 2. I assume somebody's going to be written in Mark Sullivan's district, even though nobody filed. But is this something that we would have the fleet subgroup address, since the fleet is the biggest sustainable or the biggest purchase that we as a city would make in terms of the impact it's going to have on the environment? Or do we want to leave this to the people who originally volunteered to work specifically on the sustainable purchasing policy? I believe that was Spencer and me, and possibly Christy as well. How do the members feel about this? Spencer, since you're one of the possible subgroup members, how do you feel?
you know, if I would say if anybody wants to come help us with it, I think it's great to have more help with it. But are you proposing a different fleet group? Is that what you were proposing?
It wouldn't be a different fleet group. What I'm saying is that we've got this task. I'm sorry, I'm a visual person.
Good.
We have this task of reviewing the fleet 5-year replacement plan that did not follow the sustainable purchasing policy. We also have a task that says we need to review this purchasing policy and see how we can improve it so that people deciding on things like the new fleet can use it. And my question is, should we keep those two separate or should we blend the two? Since again, like I think the perception that maybe city staff came away with from that sustainable purchasing policy was that it pertained to things like paper and cleaning supplies, not to these really big ticket items, both in costs and emissions. So I'm comfortable either way. I'm just wondering what do the members think? Like, I think you and I, Spencer, and maybe with Christie's help, if she's still able to, I think we can do a great job, working on that policy and writing a resolution that specifically recommends some actions related to the fleet for future years. But
I think
Go
they should
ahead.
be separate directions. I mean, it could be the same people work on them, but I think they're two separate callings, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think we work on both of them simultaneously in different avenues.
Okay, Dominic?
Yeah, I was going to echo Spencer's point. I think that the fleet replacement schedule could be more effectively greened up if it was targeted and focused, and we came in a position of support beneath the fleet manager rather than draping, what may be perceived as regulatory red tape over the top of his job.
Okay. Other thoughts? I'm especially interested in your thoughts, Christy, since you're one of the 3 who originally was on this subgroup, but we'll go to Kermit since Kermit's got his hand raised, Christy, so we'll go to him and then you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I mean, that essentially is the question I have. If the 3 of you who are on that plan or that sustainability purchasing policy plan group are willing to continue that group, then I think that's an excellent way to proceed. And we can cross collaborate or pollinate as appropriate as we move that along.
Okay.
Being cautious not to get over a quorum of members for the subgroup meetings.
Right. It's always good to be mindful of that. Christy, you next, and then we'll go back to you, Dominic.
Sure. I echo the same thoughts. I think they're good suggestions to break it up. They are, cleaning supplies and paper are very different than cars and vehicles. So, yep, I like that. I like the suggestions. Thank you.
And are you willing to be on the subgroup with me and Spencer, or will your
Yeah,
time
I
commit?
can. I certainly can. Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, I have
Good.
other fun interests too, but lots of fun stuff to do.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dominic.
Yeah, just a shameless request for a chapter in the sustainable purchasing policy on refrigerants and appliances, refrigerators and building systems.
I like that.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And it's consistent with our draft sustainable city plan. So good. All right. Any last comments on this sustainable purchasing policy?
Dominic, quick question. How often does that refrigerants, do you get purchased very often, or is it more of once you buy a device?
Right. I think that they show up in sneaky ways, like dorm room fridges, for instance, or a window air conditioning unit, or if somebody's updating, their air conditioner in a building. For instance, maybe the scope of the purchasing policy is more towards day-to-day operations and less towards capital expenses, and maybe these items would fall into capital expenses. It's just, as I look at the refrigerants challenge, I don't think that there are many levers to squeeze high GWP refrigerants out of the city of Middleton. I was just hoping that this could be one of the mechanisms for that.
Cool, thank you.
Good question and a good point. Kermit.
And as far as the SPP goes, then I think I agree with Dominic and other comments made as far as it should cover everything the city buys. I mean, in some way, as it relates to sustainability, we want to address, HVAC, systems upgrades, refrigerants, vehicles, and paper. But I think part of that is making sure we have a rollout and education and kind of help ensure the managerial follow through to implement and reinforce the plan, because if people read it and they think, oh, it's just for paper, we are missing the boat. We need to make sure that not only does it say it, but that people know it says all of these things need to be purchased with an eye towards sustainability.
Great. I like that managerial follow through, since that apparently did not happen previously. Okay. All right. So Dick, I see your hands raised. And
Sorry.
yeah,
I thought Dominic was talking more about not just city government, but he was talking about citywide use of people buying air conditioners for Windows units and things like that. So I think the whole policy is, I mean, maybe what the intent originally was for city operations and how the purchasing policy should be directed for city operations. But I thought I detected what Dominic was saying is that we got a bigger challenge citywide to figure out how can we get people to be buying the responsible equipment that won't be promoting the HFCs and whatever.
Dominic, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. I guess I had assumed that the scope of the purchasing policy was just for city operations, but I would love to be able to influence citizens of Middleton in purchasing decisions as well. Sorry, I'm getting off topic, but one of the ideas for refrigerant mitigation would be maybe a chapter in Sustainable U, just from a public education standpoint. I think that not a lot of people are aware of, even small leaks in their window unit. It has GWP of 10,000 times CO2. So you drive your car for a year, or you drain the Freon out of your window AC unit, and it's pretty much the same impact. It's sneaky in that way. So yeah, I think public education is a critical angle on that particular problem.
I just want to follow up. I'm wondering if we can't think about some rebate programs that we could either fund ourselves or try to find grants for that would incentivize people to be buying the right kind of equipment. All this stuff we're doing for city operations obviously is really important. It's one of the shorter term goals that we have, but our longer term goals are to basically cut the carbon footprint of the whole city, the city landscape, the businesses, the private residences. And so I think we need to be really thinking bigger here on some critical issues like you've just raised.
And that's your point about the possible rebate is a good one. We'll talk about that when we get to the work plan, because that is one of the, question mark things that maybe our subgroup on refrigerants will consider. Okay, let's move on to the action that we have to take, which.
I
Go
see
ahead.
Katie's hand.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Katie. Yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I love all these ideas. I just want us to make sure that we're only eating the elephant one bite at a time, so that we don't get these subcommittees that are just with head swimming missions. While I like the rebate idea and like helping the whole city get more sustainable, I think that it's important to help move the city hall and the fleet there and get that really going as a great example. And then moving in with the rebate ideas and everything. It's great. I just hope we're just not expanding the task of this subcommittee so much so that it's just kind of hard to focus on one thing.
Sure. Well, and just to clarify, in my mind, the sustainable purchasing plan subgroup or policy subgroup is going to be focusing just on it and just on the city. But can work in a reference to refrigerants because that, that falls squarely under sustainable purchasing, and there's a need for clarification and guidance on that. But I think when we get into the work plan discussion, there will be a subgroup working on the bigger question of how to manage refrigerants better, since that is such a, the chemicals are such a potent greenhouse gas that it's a low-hanging fruit in a way, or it just has a lot of return on our investment. And so I agree that we don't want to take on too much, but I see this as like a year-long process to figure out, to get all our ducks in a row and figure out what's the plan going to be to roll out these ideas like a rebate program. I don't see that as something we could possibly do this year.
Dominic's idea of putting the refrigerant idea in a sustainable U session, I think that's cool.
Yep, I do too. Okay. All right, so the charging infrastructure, we see the memo before us. I hope everyone had a big chance to read it. This charging infrastructure was a huge impediment to starting the transition of our fleet to EVs this year. And so in conversations, we talked about the need to remove that impediment and make sure that there's charging infrastructure available so that in 2023, we won't have to go, or for the 2023 budget cycle, we won't be disappointed again. And so Kelly came up with this idea, and Kelly, I'm going to turn it over to you to make the pitch to the committee.
Well, I'll try to make it brief because I think you've read most of what the pitch is, but we have our bids for solar last year came in lower than we'd expected, and we got more rebate back from Focus than we'd expected. And it's kind of the fund that keeps going. It was initially 300,000 that came from an old closed out state revolving loan fund. And as a credit to Bill Burns and Abby, Bill saw that money, and I think he had the idea to allocate that towards solar initially. So they did a lot of work figuring out the ROIs on that, and they pitched it to council as 3 buildings with solar, in addition to an RER agreement with MGE for the airport solar array. It was kind of a package pitch to council. And so from that fund, years later, 2 or 3 years later, we still have about 113,000 left in that. But for this budget year in 2022, we've already gotten approved capital budget for 2 solar arrays on the water utility well pumps, and then a golf course clubhouse roof PV solar. So we'll be doing 3 solar projects this year as well. And the only other thing I would say that we could perhaps ask carryover from that fund would be to help with the display at Lakeview Park Shelter. But I'm thinking maybe something more simple there, just to show the solar output via a computer, a kind of a screen and a nice display. But I did talk to Matt Amundsen about it. He said that we do need to think about that people have weddings there and they have a lot of special events there. And so we would have to run all of that by parks and public lands. And it's not necessarily that sustainability has carte blanche to put whatever we want on all the walls there. So I think we could do that under 10,000 for sure. But my idea was to take that money and see if council would approve reallocating that. First, they'd have to approve the carryover and then approve a reallocation to put that money towards EV charging infrastructure and the electrical work for that. And again, like there's unanswered questions still, but and I don't know exactly which comes first, the chicken or the egg with some of this stuff, but I'm anxious to have the money reallocated before it gets taken and put into different things or taken back by the city for other things. I feel like that on council right now, there's support for EV charging infrastructure. And I think most council members recognize that that's a sticking point and that we can't get EVs until we have the charging infrastructure, and that costs money. And so I think that council, even right now, would be willing. I think I don't want to say I'm confident at all, but I'm willing to take this to council now. It doesn't mean we'd have to spend it right away. You know, I want to do that carefully and understand what we're spending it on. Maybe Katie could even speak to what you think council feels about that or about that process.
I think that there's a lot of support for whatever we can do. I think you would find that there would be a positive response.
I don't want to take the money from ARPA because the ARPA funds have already been allocated. It doesn't mean that they couldn't change, but I wouldn't feel comfortable advocating that any money be taken from the other projects for this. And this seems like a way to get around the capital budget expenditure that I think everyone thought we'd be looking at a capital expenditure in 2023 for the electric charging infrastructure before the cars rolled onto the lot. And so this takes that away and jump starts it.
Kelly, I think that just makes the decision easier for the council to approve the EV vehicles if they're not worried about where's the money going to come from for this infrastructure. And it sounds like you've got Bill Burns' blessing on this, and he's really smart about this stuff. So I really take that as a very good sign.
Okay, good. Spencer?
I think this sounds like a great idea. I guess my question is, instead of is there anybody who objects to a proposal like this? It might be a faster way to get down to the bottom line of what we're all thinking out there.
You mean anyone on our committee who objects?
Right. Is there any need to have discussion on this committee to make this happen? Because this one seems like a no-brainer. I don't know anything else to do with this. It seems like it's a hands down, move on to the next subject. But I don't want to rush it. I just want to see if there's anything else out there that anybody thinks is a bad idea.
That's a good point. And so Kelly, if you'll just scroll up a little bit to the title again. I'd like someone to make a motion. I'm going to ask first though, Kelly, leftover. I'm wondering if we should strike leftover and use instead either unspent funds or carryover. To me, leftover has, maybe it's just a food thing. It's got a negative connotation, whereas carryover is a very specific term.
Yeah, I think I'd have to get the carryover approved in addition to the reallocation. Like, I don't know if they're all a part of the same thing. I have a process question about that. But I do want to mention that my motion isn't necessarily to approve this memo exactly as it is, because I feel I wrote this memo rather quickly and it has the pertinent information, but it also is missing some details from the MGE meeting that we didn't have that we thought we were having. And also what I was going to do was add in the motion to this memo that I think I wrote a motion out somewhere in this memo, or maybe in the staff comments of the agenda. Not that you'd have to use that one, but it was just some language, it basically said to the sustainability committee, asked for approval to carry over this amount and then reallocate it for blah, blah, blah. And then I would put that motion into this memo along with the case for it to happen.
Sure. And I see your wording now, and Kermit, I see your hand is raised, but just to clarify, I see your wording at the bottom of page 1. And I think my only suggestion is that I would change it to say, again, seeing your memo title there, approval of carryover funds from solar account and reallocation towards charging infrastructure in 2022. That's the suggestion I would make for what the motion, how the motion could be phrased. Kermit, you have a question or your hand is raised.
One is clarification of some of the language I was hearing. Is this a loan that we're tapping into, or is this, you said something about there's a rotating loan, maybe I misunderstood. So I just want to clarify that this is like actual money that we have in the city that we can reallocate.
Yes, it's not it initially was some kind of revolving loan from the state, and then they closed it out, and I
Okay.
don't know the right word, but Middleton received 300,000 from that, and Bill, to his credit,
Okay.
was saying, let's use that for sustainability. It's a pot of money we didn't think we'd have, or we didn't, weren't budgeting
Okay.
for. So now we have that money, but then this is like 3 years later, we still have money in that account because things have just been cheaper than what we initially
Okay.
thought.
So it may have been sounds like it's left over from a program the state was operating, which had people paying back grants as a loan,
Oh, I don't know.
or something like that. But anyways, okay, bottom line, it's real money. We got it. And this is a powerful opportunity. Okay, the other is, as far as my sense, my hunch, my hope is in alignment with Katie's sense that the council is going to be very receptive to this. Nevertheless, I do also have some thoughts about framing the request or the proposal in part. I think it can be perhaps a helpful point to make explicit, because I hope people are pretty much listening and listening between the lines, as it were. The money was going to further our sustainability and climate change action goals for the city. And it is still going to forward our sustainability and climate action goals for the city. So that, I think, is worth making explicit, and maybe it is, and I'm just not recalling it from the memo, but to highlight, we're not changing the use of the money. We are using it for the same overall objective that we started out with. And I think that at least it would make a difference for me to understand it that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
When the council hears things that Bill Burns suggests, they take that as gold. He is the money guy. So if he's suggesting that this is found money and he wants it, he thinks it's a good idea to use it for sustainability, I think that it'll be an easy sell.
That makes me
Underline
wonder.
that too, Bill Burns.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes me wonder if it's important to think about where this memo ultimately comes from.
Well, I think it should have his name in it.
He did,
Maybe
he did say that the money could be used for EV infrastructure. He didn't like put a stamp of, oh, I fully support kind of thing.
Right. And he isn't the final word, right? The council is, but if it's mentioned that he helped us figure this out.
Sure. So
Yeah,
appropriately reference Bill Burns in the memo. Okay, does somebody want to make the motion then?
Let me scroll up to my
Dick
stack.
is.
I'll make the motion that
Does
the
Kelly have
language
a
that you
phrasing or phrasing?
Yeah, the phrasing that Lisa had was pretty good.
The last sentence is some language, but please amend however you want. But this in red, starting with staff requests a motion from sustainability committee but you can change the wording however you want.
I would go back to your page showing your memo title, Kelly. There it is. And yeah, I would, like I said, I think a good motion could be to, it's a recommendation to approve carryover funds from solar account and reallocate towards charging infrastructure in 2022. So Dick, would you like to?
Yeah, that's a really good motion. I like the way you've worded it. And I think that's probably general enough that Kelly can add enough other caveats to make it work.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Spencer seconds. Any further discussion?
Could you read it back to me exactly how
Sure.
you want to word it? Because I don't feel comfortable with rewording your motion after the fact
Yep,
the way I
that's
want it.
fine.
Like it has to be the
So
way.
the recommendation from the Sustainability Committee is that council approve carryover funds from the solar account and reallocate towards charging infrastructure in 2022. Kermit's got
So
his
just
hand raised.
Would we want to include a phrase that reemphasizes the framing I was urging earlier as part of the motion, or should that just be left for the memo? You know, framing it as we're hardly reallocating. We're using it for the same purpose it was set aside for originally. And so
That's a good question. Let's go to Dick and get his input before we
Okay.
address that.
Yeah, I think you could say the Sustainability Committee approves the use of solar funds and the reallocation of them for a, the solar charging stations infrastructure. I think that's simple enough, clear enough, and any explanatory stuff could be included in the memo. I can't see making this, because it sounds like solar, we're going solar and we're going solar charging. So it's all solar. Why is it not clear?
Is it solar? Charging infrastructure doesn't have to be solar, so is
I'm
this?
sorry. Yeah. Charging infrastructure. Yeah.
Yep.
It's all energy.
To Kermit's point about the reallocation, I mean, not to bog this down because I don't like getting into minutia like this. However, is this a reallocation? Because if it is, then I think we need to phrase it correctly. If Kermit's right and we aren't really reallocating so much as allocating, then I would be in favor of taking out but I don't know. And maybe Kelly, that's clarification you can get from Bill Burns.
Yeah, I don't think it's allocated now. I couldn't buy EV infrastructure with that fund right now. That wouldn't be allowable.
okay.
And can we use the word conversion or something like that rather than I agree, getting rid of the that sounds like it's going back into a pot and being redistributed.
It is basically like you have to first carry it over. That's one thing. So it's back in the big pot, and then you have to reallocate it to something different than what it had previously been.
Okay, Dominic?
Right, I didn't realize there were two transactions involved. I was gonna recommend that we simply motion to allocate funds in the solar fund account to charging infrastructure in 2022. But if we have to have a separate comment on the carryover transaction, yeah, sorry, thought that I had something to offer.
That's okay. We're all trying. We're all trying
Yeah,
here.
I think it's coming from the solar fund account and we're moving it out of that.
So that would
But
be.
I think it does have to say reallocate.
Okay, so Kelly, do you want to read the motion again so we all know what we're voting on?
Recommendation from Sustainability Committee that council approve use of solar funds. I had and reallocate towards charging infrastructure, but that's not. I got mixed up when Dick did his and then I typed over what I had.
Well, the original was to approve the carryover funds from the solar account and reallocate towards charging infrastructure in 2022. And if that was, I think, the original. So Dick, are you okay with that wording? He's okay, and that's what Spencer seconded. So now there being no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, so passes unanimously. And Katie, how are we doing on time for this agenda item?
We have a little less than 13 minutes.
Okay,
Who made the initial motion? Was it Haniro and then?
it was Dick.
Okay.
Dick made the motion, Spencer seconded.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's take that 13 minutes and use it for our work plan updates. The fourth thing I had on the list was just my question about how did we come upon so much carryover, and is that going to be something that council's going to flag as a problem? But let's not take time discussing it now, because I think our time would be better spent looking over our work plan. So we do have on the agenda work plan updates, but in addition to updates from the members, we also need to approve our work plan for 2022. And I guess, Kelly, this is where I get to share my screen. All right, let me find what I'm looking for. Work plan. Okay, so we've got, here's what I did. I took all of Kelly's tasks. And by the way, I want to again thank everybody for submitting comments on the sustainable city plan. Things have been extremely busy for the last month and a half for me, both personally and professionally. So my apologies for not having delivered a draft, the revised draft for you all to review today of the sustainable city plan, but it is in the works, I promise. I focused on the work plan and incorporated comments that I received from folks, including, pulling out, Dick, I think, had suggested not covering Kelly's tasks because this is really our committee's work plan, but recognizing that all of Kelly's tasks are in some way going to come to us, either for staff reports or for just ideas or recommendations like the one we just approved for council. So I separated Kelly's out and put those on the first page and then put in a little introductory text. So in 2022, Kelly's got these 7 big tasks. Kelly, I took out the one related to, I think it was the, I think I took it out, the one from the energy plan, talking about the energy efficiency improvements in the city buildings, because if I remember correctly, you said that was, they've done everything they needed to do. Did I get that right?
Well, there's always more to do, but they completed most of what was in our energy plan.
Okay. If you think we need to put that back in, I can certainly do that. So what do you think? Add it back in?
I don't know. I mean, I feel
Is it
like it
something-
might be hard for you to like get into detail on everything I'm going to work on and not work on, like, because it changes kind of depending on what opportunities arise. And then there's a lot of stuff I do that's I don't necessarily bring to the committee, but just like minor stuff like bird city stuff and stuff on the planning side of things. So, and like on number 4, I don't know if I'll be able to establish new construction design guidance this year. Maybe. I mean, I'd love to do all of this.
Sure.
But it's hard to.
And
I don't want to
recognize that-
overcommit. So this is a lot. This is like a ton of stuff from our comp plan.
Right. And since this is so much stuff, we maybe could have a discussion later, not tonight, about things like the bird city stuff, how big a task is that? And is that really, given your limited time, is that a high priority, or is that something that someone else could take care of if it's just, submitting paperwork or something? But understand that these are taken in almost every case verbatim from the source, either the Green City chapter or the energy plan. So all
but that's a
those
20-year
things-
plan. Like the comp plan is a 20-year plan. So it's
Sure.
not necessarily like you have
Sure.
to do.
but understand that that whole bullet came from that plan, and it doesn't, its position in this document or its placement in the document doesn't mean all those things are going to get done. It's just that we know that the data tracking and benchmarking is, and the purchasing sustainable products, those are all in there. But if you're more comfortable with me editing it to take out things like the new construction design guidance for municipal buildings, we can do that, certainly. Dick,
Well,
your
my
hand is-
main thing is that, like, the committee, if you want me to work on something, then you need to vote as a committee for my tasks. Like, it can't be just I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Actually, I don't, because my understanding was that you are working on all these things now, like the solar arrays on the clubhouse and the wells, that's in the works, right?
yeah,
And that's why that item is in this, on this page. And is there not work going on with MG&E to convert the remaining streetlights? Or is that not one of the plans?
it's not I mean, it's in the energy plan to work on. We need to first figure out the rate structure, probably with other communities.
Sure. Well, then let me, I want to hear from Dick and Kermit, but Kelly, think about, because again, these are only in here, not for us to be giving you direction to do something. It was my understanding from things you've said in your staff reports and elsewhere, that these are all activities that you're working on in 2022. And whatever you're not going to be working on in 2022, I can take out of this document, because it's really supposed to just accurately reflect what you're already planning to be doing. Okay, Dick, will go to you, and then Kermit.
Okay, well, I like how you pulled it out. First of all, I want to give you feedback on that. One of the things I just noticed, for example, I mean, this streetlight thing to me is an important fruit. I don't know how low hanging it is, because it sounds like a challenge to get MG&E to give over the rights to their streetlights. But it sounds like 2/3 of the lights in the city have not been converted because MG&E controls them. The specifics of number 2, I would suggest just make it work with MG&E to convert all remaining streetlights to LED to cut current electricity usage and get rid of the specifics, because we don't have the specifics on any other thing. It's an overall goal to work towards this. And I think putting down, we're going to cut it by 45%, and it'll amount to 210 tons of CO2. I think that is specificity that may change. And so just to keep it as a general list of actions that this committee would like to see city staff work on. And I think that's what you're really saying here. We're hoping that Kelly and other city staff and other departments, it's more than just Kelly, to work with MG&E. I'm sure Public Works and Streets or Transportation has got to be heavily involved in this. But these are things that we believe that the city should be doing, and that Kelly obviously has a lead role in many of them.
Okay.
But the specificity of 2, which you've highlighted, electricity usage, I think that's fine.
Usage. Okay. Kermit, thanks for that comment, Dick.
Yeah, I'm just also musing about how we can phrase that part. In 2022, we'll be advising staff on the following actions related to energy is not, and maybe we need to make it clearer, committing to all of those things being completed by the end of 2022, at least in my mind. I mean, part of it is we're highlighting these as areas of action and activity that will be providing advice and input regarding and supporting Kelly. But what was the one about the efficient building operations and design, guidance? That's a longer term thing. But if we need to start moving in that direction, or eat the elephant a spoonful at a time. It's like we can maybe do something in 2022 to move towards that new construction design guidance for municipal buildings. And I see these as things that we want to make progress on in 2022 and we want to advise staff on. But I'm not, hanging my head on it being completed by the end of 2022. Some of them I'd like to see happen, but it's like we need to, that's part of the advising that we'll be doing.
Okay, so if I understand what you're saying, Kermit, it's to make it clear somewhere in the intro part that we're advising on these activities in 2022 and hope to make progress, but not necessarily complete them in 2022.
Right.
Okay, thanks. Katie?
I think we need to remember that we're not the boss of Kelly and other staff. I think that I like the idea where we just stated that it's more of our goals. This is a one bite at a time. And don't get hung up on 1 year.
Duly noted. Although this is a one-year plan. And again, I'm sorry if it came across, I hope it didn't come across as a mandate that Kelly do these things. Again, I'll just say again, the conversations that we've had over the past several months, it sounded to me like Kelly is already working on these things in 2022. And for that reason, the things we're going to talk about next, which is the committee member tasks, are things she won't be able to help with because she's working on things like the battery storage and the microgrids. I mean, these were things that have come up in our meeting discussions in the past. So I'll just reiterate that anything Kelly is not prepared to, or not already working on or preparing to work on in 2022 needs to come off this list. This list should be an accurate representation of the big projects that are documented somewhere, like the comp plan and the energy plan are the main sources for our sustainable city plan and our work plan.
And remember
So-
that comp plan is like the dream, the
Right.
overall dream.
Right.
That Kelly has a lot of other things that she has to do besides this list. So
Right. And I feel like I'm having to defend the things I put in here. Again, these are not a mandate to Kelly to do anything. It's supposed to be an accurate reflection of what she is doing. And the comp plan is a dream, but my understanding is the reason we're working on the sustainable city plan and our work plan is to take some of that dream and turn it into a reality, one chunk at a time. And we need to pare down this list and our list because we don't have the bandwidth to do all these things. But I wanted to be clear, maybe I don't need to say it again, but I in no way intended this list of 7 items to be a directive to Kelly to get things done.
that's our time.
That's our time for,
The 1 hour, the
okay, good,
the
yeah.
13 minutes.
Okay, so now you can start the timer, Katie, for 25 minutes for the work plan discussion. Christy, and then back to Dave.
Oh, am I allowed to still talk? Is that still in the same?
Yes, yeah, we're, the timer that went off was actually timing the previous.
Oh, okay, right,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I just, I like what you're saying, Lisa, about being careful not to take on too many projects. I know in, let's say, my last job, we took on so many projects, and it's my feeling that when you take on too many projects and too many things, you actually end up getting less done. So I'm glad you are thinking about that. But I do really also, I do want to echo Katie's comments too, that, I don't want us as committee to feel like, and I don't want especially Kelly to feel like we're thinking we're her boss. Kelly already has a boss. She doesn't need 5 more. So I just want to make sure that this list doesn't give any impression to Kelly or us or anybody who sees this list as an impression that we are trying to micromanage Kelly or things like that. Because there's so much more that is behind the scenes that Kelly does that I, maybe isn't captured on this list. And I don't want, Kelly's such a value to the city and to us. And I wouldn't want anyone in this position to feel kind of threatened that, well, someone might try to hold me accountable to this in a year. And what if I don't make it, and I don't think that's the goal here. So I just want to make sure that's not how any of this comes across.
That's a good point. And Christy, you raising that makes me think that is how it's coming across. So I'm going to make a suggestion, and that is that we take out any of the tasks that committee members aren't going to be working on directly. And Dick and then Spencer.
Yeah. Well, that was actually my original comment that I sent ahead of time, is that if we're not working on it as a committee, then should we list it? One of the things I've noticed in just reading down through these 7 lists here, some of them start with, I think my old English from a long time ago was with a gerund, like partner with, work with, install. Install, that is the way that's worded, is if you don't do it, then somebody's going to say, why didn't you do it? Whereas if you're working to install, I'm not saying that's how we should say it. And then number 5, the city will support, make it a gerund, support robust. Number 6, partner with, develop, so you're starting the process. So it's almost at the top, instead of 2022 work plan, because we're starting things, we're working on things. So it's like 2022 work priorities or work initiatives or work activities, rather than it's a plan of stuff that we're going to do. And again, we are, as Katie said, we are not Kelly's supervisors. She is part of city staff. We are advising, as a committee, we are advising the city's functions, and Kelly specifically, because she staffs our committee. We have our own activities that we are going to do. So again, these things are not things that we're doing. We will support them whatever way that our committee that Kelly and the city needs our committee to do. But this is where I've had problems, the way this whole thing has been worded before, is that these are big things, long range things that we get started and work on, but they're not actually our own work priorities for our committee.
Those are good points. Again, the phrasing is coming directly from the primary source, and I'm reluctant to change the wording, except in, very specific instances, like changing a 20-year replacement plan to a 5-year, because that's how it is now. But I agree with your point about the inconsistency and maybe the different connotation that the city will do something versus install, how that comes across. And I have in here, will be advising staff on the following actions. So again, it's not staff will do this. It's our role as a committee is to do a couple things. We advise, and then we have projects of our own. These were the ones that I understood to be on deck for 2022. But if it is causing concern, I'm happy to cut out everything from here down to the end of this page, and we'll just focus on the activities that we as a committee, the individual members will take on. Spencer and then Christy.
Hey guys, I'm going to take a little opposite stance in this. I actually feel that this is a goal. This is what we want to accomplish. This is our top priorities. I think as a committee, if we don't have priorities, and I've said, listen to everybody, we've given ourselves a lot of excuses not to get things done, right? Whether it's, well, maybe we'll get it done in 5 years, or we'll do this. I fully understand Kelly has a lot on her plate, and this is not directed at Kelly at all. This is directed at, I think we are perfectly in our right to be able to put together a goal and our priorities of what we want to actually focus on. And there are going to be hundreds of other things that come and go. But if we keep our sights on something like these big ticket items, we'll be able to achieve them in the long run. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Spencer. Christy, and then Kermit, and then Katie.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, that's a good point, Spencer, very much. What came to mind when I was thinking about these is, and some of these things that are so much longer range, as some of the other members have mentioned as well, it seems like instead of just a list like this, that seems like could be interpreted as this is a 2022, set thing. Does anyone know how to make a Gantt chart? I'm not. I don't know how to do those very well, but I'm thinking some of those charts that really show and visualize, this might start, October 2022, but then potentially it's not even feasible to even get done for 2 years, but at least we still have this longer term visual plan instead of, kind of just a word list like this. So just an idea.
Thanks, Christy. Kermit?
My brief comment is what Spencer said. I think we want to keep these flags in front of us, and just make sure we're clear, we'll be advising staff on the following actions. It's like, we're not saying it's happening by a particular time. This isn't that, in my reading, and as it's flowing right now, it's not that kind of a planning document. A Gantt chart would be a supplemental thing that I think could be useful, but also could be a really huge project management headache just to come up with one. But in terms of this document, to keep those things in front of us. So anything we can do to help you, Kelly? The solar arrays, is that moving ahead? Excellent. Keep up the good work. Oh, wait, should we show up at the council and talk to them about that? I mean, I think that sort of thing is legitimate and definitely within our purview, even if we're not personally, individually, or as a committee responsible. So sorry. So anyways.
Thank you, Kermit. We'll go to Katie and then Deb.
I'm sorry to say this. I feel like we have so many different documents that are saying almost the same thing. We've got a comp plan, we have a city plan, we have this work plan. I feel like they should say different things, like the work plan should be the bite-sized chunks, the city plan another, the comp plan another. I'm feeling like we're drowning in documentation. And maybe I'm completely off base here. I like Kermit's ideas that we're trying to support Kelly and doing whatever she needs us to do. So I just wish we could change this language a little bit.
Okay, to respond to the hierarchy of the documents, I completely agree that we as a city have way too many plans. I think the comp plan is too long. And I think the Green City chapter is the longest one in there. I get that it's a 20-year plan, but if you throw the entire kitchen sink in there, it's going to be really hard to figure out what exactly needs to come out of the faucet this particular year. So you're right. There's a ton of actions out there. The Sustainable City Plan is an attempt to take, or what I've done so far with it is attempt to take out from the mostly the Green City chapter, take out the actions that should, if our priority is achieving the 100% renewable energy goal by 2050. I tried to pull out from the comp plan the actions that will get us there. We can't do them all at once, so that's why the Sustainable City Plan is proposed to be a 3-year look at what we're going to be doing. We don't have committee members with 3-year terms, so the work plan is the 1-year snapshot. So if you picture it as a funnel, you've got the comp plan with all of its actions coming through a small funnel to get 3 years worth of activities out specifically related to energy. or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And then from that smaller chunk, an even thinner stream comes out, which is this work plan. But these are all the items that came from the comp plan originally, because it does not make any sense to be writing up new tasks when we have a bazillion tasks already that somebody is supposed to be working on. Otherwise, what was the point of the comprehensive plan being written? Deb, and then Dick.
My question is, being that Kelly is heading up this committee, Kelly is the workhorse of this committee. I mean, more work gets done through Kelly than gets done through the committee. And if you remove what Kelly is doing, where is that listed? Because this is all important work. And if it isn't part of our committee, then where are you saying it should go?
I think it should go in this plan as a description of what is being done or what's being prioritized. But it sounded like some members of the committee, and perhaps Kelly too, were regarding this as a directive from the committee, dictating what Kelly should be working on, rather than what I think it is, which is a description of what Kelly already has told us she's working on.
Right, and if this is what that is, if these are items that Kelly is working on in this year, I don't see a problem with putting it in there because she's already working on it. We're not telling her she has to. She has chosen to do these. Kelly, am I totally off base on this? Aren't these things that you are working on? And if you're not, then yes, let's remove it. But if you are working on these things, shouldn't it be in here? That's my question. Shouldn't it be in our work plan?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it being in the work plan. I think my initial thing was I read number 4 and I thought it was citywide because we do have things about benchmarking programs and policies that are more citywide in the comp plan. And then I went back and read and it says municipal policies. So I do have a hand in all this work this year, although some of it, I just don't want to overpromise or have something in writing and then at the end of the year say, well, we didn't make any progress on this, but we actually had a lot of meetings and relationships built and we have moved forward even though we haven't accomplished it. Like there's a lot of that kind of work in the city where you meet with other municipalities and you have to plan these things out and have meetings, but it's not necessarily like you are installing a microgrid or you are changing your street lights, because it's some of the stuff takes a long time. So as long as, I guess I just want to know the expectations of it. And there is a lot of other stuff I'm working on that I could put on this list too. So I'm just wondering like how to convey my full project load in a way that's transparent for both the public and the committee, and not overpromise things.
Dick's got his hand raised, but before that, I need, I just noticed the time because we're not like completely in sync on our agenda. So I need someone to make a motion to extend the time to 8:30, please.
So moved.
Moved. All right, then I second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Dick?
Yeah. So I'm going to make a recommendation here, and actually you're probably going to shoot me because this goes back to where some of the things you were doing before. Instead of being a 2022 work plan, why not make it a little more general, a little more flexible, a little bit broader, call it a 2022-24 work priorities for sustainable Middleton, and make these the general big areas that we want to see the city work on. Now, maybe there's some that need to be added because Kelly's, doing things she said that aren't even on the list here. But talk about work priorities rather than a plan, so that number 3, if we don't get the solar arrays installed on the clubhouse this year, then we're failing. So we're saying we're going to get them installed within the next 2-3 years, or part of this 3-year process, so that we're giving ourselves enough flexibility to work on the really big things, which is where we want to see the whole city going towards. And then the activities that our actual committee work on, which are Deb is saying, are fairly small relative to supporting the city staff to move on to big things. Then we might list some projects like the light bulb exchange, or your sustainable U, or your, the parade, and things that our committee itself is responsible for doing. But they're outside of these bigger things that.
Right. Okay, I like the idea of having a longer term look, and that is what the sustainable city plan is. In my mind, a well-functioning committee, just like a staff person. I mean, in my career, we had an annual work plan, and each of us visualized what it is that we wanted to accomplish, and then we held ourselves to account. And so did our boss. So I see the work plan as a way to organize our activities and give us all a look at, it's like a big picture look for the whole calendar year of what activities we're going to be undertaking, and not have them come up willy-nilly or as a surprise. And so that's why what you're talking about, Dick, is this document right here, which we probably aren't going to have time to thoroughly discuss tonight. But this is our snapshot of what committee members have signed up to do. And as you see, sorry to scroll so fast through here, but on here, there are things like the recycling center cleanup, which I didn't know about it until it came up like a month in advance. We have the Sustain Dane Summit for those who want to do it. Heads up about council meetings and other committee meetings that we might want to attend. And then here we've got all our educational activities like Sustainable U and the Good Neighbor Festival. So what you were describing about like what the committee is doing, that's in this part of the work plan. Can you all even see this?
No.
Okay.
I was going to
realize
ask you,
now.
say, Lisa, are you thinking you're showing us a document?
I
It's not
do think I'm
moving.
showing something. I think I have to stop share and share again. I thought I could go from one item.
Yeah.
Here we go. I thought I could go from one item in the application to the other. So here we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So that's what this document is. This shows what our committee members are going to be working on. And as you see, there are a ton of things in this too. We need to make sure, like some of them, all right, so Sustainable U, that's underway. We've got a pretty good handle on it. It takes work, but it's not planning the Good Neighbor Festival, right? That's much more intensive for a short time. Sustainable U is lightly intensive for a longer time. Things like this climate change presentation with Bob Lindmeyer, that's something that we're sort of glomming onto. It came up from Kevin Spitler, and now the library is on it. I think it would be a good partnership for us to be involved in helping to plan it, but not do the heavy lifting, because we don't need to. Somebody else is on it. We get an opportunity to showcase or talk about what it is that we do. So this document is, Kelly's name is not in this part of the document, this part of the work plan, because Kelly's only role might be to help us spend money when the time comes, if we need to order something for like the bulbs. But these are all the tasks that we've either said we would undertake, or they were in the draft of the Sustainable City Plan. And when I asked the members for input on, or their feedback on the actions in there and what they personally would like to undertake in the coming year, this reflects that. So what I'm going to suggest is that, and I apologize for not getting this document out to people further in advance, but I think given the discussion, I think it probably wouldn't have mattered even if I had gotten it out further in advance, because the intention might not have been clear. That's apparent to me at least. Dick, is your hand still raised?
No, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing
yeah,
an
no, no.
opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I'm going to suggest, since we do still have the Stonehorse Green conversation to have, is we'll come back to this in February, but everybody take a look. I'll talk to Kelly offline to make sure that what is listed are the big items from the comp plan that are related to energy that Kelly's going to be working on this year, which we will be advising on. I know there are other things. I know the list of things Kelly's going to be working on this year could take up 4 pages. We don't need to list it all. We just need to cover the things that are documented somewhere in the comp plan or the energy plan or another good source, and pertain to our overall goal, which is the 100% renewable energy, achieving that. But take a look at where you are signed up to do something, or maybe voluntold for now, because I wasn't sure who all was going to be doing what. Some people did let me know. I think we should always have 2 people working on something, just because having a partner is very important for, making sure you have another set of eyes to look over things, another like brain for brainstorming. And so we'll return to this next time, and I hope to be able to put it to bed. Now, in the short time we have remaining for the work plan items, I'm just going to report really briefly on Sustainable U. We've got February 8th. I hope everybody will show up and share the information. I'll put together, unless Kermit wants to, put together a little blurb that we should send out. The city should send out. The library always sends a reminder to its folks who participate in adult events. And I hope, Deb, maybe the Friends can publicize it too. Kermit's hosting that one. Thank you, Kermit. And that's on greening your routine. Sustainable U in March will be co-hosted. It's our partner, Friends of Pheasant Branch. We're partnering with them on their Conservancy Days. We're co-branding it as a Sustainable U, and it's focusing on water. And Dick, I was wondering if you would like to be the honorary host for the Sustainability Committee of that one. Jim Bachhuber is the speaker.
What's the date in March?
It's March 17th. That's a Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Think about it and shoot me an email to let me know.
That one at the library?
To my knowledge, Deb, the library is not open, nor will they be for in-person events.
Okay, so it'll still be at Comrie.
Actually, I thought we were going to do it. Well, you and I will talk about that on Wednesday, because I thought the plan was to make this Sustainable U/CD the same as the other Sustainable U's through the library. But if you want to try to do it in person, we need to let Liz Zimdars know so that she doesn't collect registration on it.
And we'll talk about it Wednesday. It's just, we kept saying TB, to be determined on we've been advertising it, and
I see.
I didn't know where it was going to be. So, okay.
Okay, well, we'll figure that out on Wednesday. That's my report for Sustainable U. Does anybody else have anything that's necessary to report on? Like, you want us to hold a date? Because it really would be great if people could show up on February 8th and bring a friend. Okay, moving on then. We'll go to the next item, which is the Stonehorse Green trash and recycling bins thing. And I'll stop sharing, Kelly, so that you can have it back. I see that it says this item may be brief if subgroup can meet, and I'm going to suggest that the subgroup meet. Do we know who the subgroup is? I think it's Spencer, Katie, and Rick. So y'all want to meet and discuss this and make a recommendation next time? Kelly, you saw the message from Rick about the nature of those bins that were in the handout, that they're actually ideal for indoor use, not outdoor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Daphne Shu got back to me about that and said that they have an outdoor version that looks almost the same, but it's for outdoors. But they also liked the brand and the style that Rick suggested as well. They sent me an updated screenshot of what the one that they had selected is, but it looks pretty much the same as the one that's in your packet. There's no drastic difference. I think they can get it so it's slightly slanted so that snow rolls off. But I think the main decisions for the subgroup will be if they want to also buy a third bin for composting that might be rolled out only for events. And then also what kind of language and graphic design you would like for the bins, because the ones that they've chosen or the ones that Rick had shown in his email to me, you can customize both. So it's really gets down to what kind of language do you want to have on the bins. It can't be much, so maybe it'd be more graphic design.
Okay. I see Deb's got her hand raised, and then we'll go to Spencer.
Well, when you're finished with Stonehorse Green, I didn't understand. I thought you were still talking about sustainable U. I do have something to say about the light bulb exchange, so
Oh, okay.
ready.
All right, thanks for that. Just Spencer?
I know there was a discussion going on somewhere, but no compost, like to me, I felt like the purpose of doing this was just to have a compost, demonstrate that compost can be done in the city. We could roll out the green and blue trash cans if we want to have trash and recycle, I guess. I know it doesn't look quite as nice, but I'm, and maybe this is the subcommittee conversation, but I'm very much for composting in this site.
Yeah, that's a great point, Spencer. I'm glad you brought that up because I had the same impression. So maybe that is a subcommittee discussion to have. Can that take place? What's the time frame for settling on this, Kelly?
Well, I think it's probably a few, 2 or 3 weeks. They want to order the bins, but then someone would go pick them up. I think the customizing, I don't know if that has to be done at the same time or if it could be added to the bins later,
Okay.
if it's that top portion.
All right, so, but it sounds like the subcommittee should meet like this week or early next week if possible. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up, Spencer. Let's go back to Deb now for
Okay.
an update on the bulb.
Yes, we had purchased 800 bulbs that went to Mom, and I contacted Jules, and he said all of them have been distributed. There are none left over, so that was very successful.
Great.
And I got a hold of Tony at ACE, and any day now is his quote. They're going to roll out the 2022 bulb program, which then we can get those bulbs for 25 cents, but it hasn't come out yet. However, I'm wondering how soon we need bulbs, and Kelly might know this. When can we start working with Boss House to do a bulb exchange there? Because not Jules, he's done. He got rid of all his bulbs. Tony said that he has some bulbs in stock that we could get at that $25 price range, 100 watt and 75 watt, but he would prefer to order all 3,000 at the same time when the 2022 program happens. But we could order some and get them sooner if we are going to be able to start the program with the Boss House, let's say in February or early March or something. So, Kelly, any news on that?
No, I think that if you want to work in the Voss House on the bulb stuff, you could do that right away, and I can try to help coordinate the community groups that need to be a part of that. You could do that whenever you want, or whenever the bulbs are ready. to do the bigger work in Voss House, that won't happen for months at this earliest. We haven't even gotten the contract done with Elevate to work on any of the energy efficient stuff. Yeah, there's a lot to do with the federal reporting still for that. And the way we have to write our agreement is specific. So that won't happen in February, or it may happen in February, but we'll just have the contract at that point.
So I guess the question is then, should we wait and order them all at once and just do that? We can get them in 2 to 3 weeks once they roll out the program. And a week ago, Tony heard that they were any day now going to roll out the program. That was a week ago. He's thinking it's going to come sooner than later, and then it's 2 to 3 weeks to get them. Should we get them all at once is the question, or should I go forward and get, he has 250 that are 100 watt and 160 that are 75 watt. Is that going to do anything, you know, with a light bulb exchange at the Voss House?
Dick?
Yeah, I just want to comment. The Voss House was not letting the Kiwanis group deliver any mom supplies because of COVID in January. So they just wanted to isolate the Voss House. That's supposed to be opening up in February. And Kelly is meeting, I think, later this week with, isn't it this week? Yeah, with Kiwanis. So I would say, yeah, if it turns out that in February that we need bulbs right away and there's still some available, then we could get them on short notice. But I would say just go ahead and order the 3,000. And we, Deb and I talked about this before, and I think we decided that it would be a mistake to order all 60 watt equivalent. Katie made the point in an earlier meeting that people like to read by bright lights, and these are older people, a lot of them. So we probably should get a certain allocation of 75 watt equivalents and 100 watt equivalents, as well as some 60s. So we came up with a ratio. But my suggestion is that let's order the 3,000 and then we'll figure out, okay, we got to start moving on how we're going to distribute them to not only the Voss House, but our whole low income housing program. And we're not going to have that ready by March or April. Because Kelly, we got to work with you to figure out how we're going to be able to get the inventories. And this is something I think Kiwanis was interested in trying to promote and having their Key Club, their high school affiliation group work with too. So there's a lot of opportunity to distribute bulbs, but a lot of work has to be done before we could do it. So I don't think we're going to need bulbs in a few weeks.
Okay, so I will wait and I will talk to you personally after this meeting at some point and we'll make our plan. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that update, Deb. And thanks so much for doing all this work with the bulbs, because it's really been, obviously, if 800 bulbs were taken up by mom clients, that's huge. That's really important. And I know I saw they tweeted about it. So they were pretty excited to have had that opportunity. So thank you for leading that.
Yeah, hey,
okay.
on that point,
ahead.
can we get some press release on that, Kelly? That the Sustainability Committee funded out of the end of last year 800 bulbs to be exchanged, and they're given out through mom. Can we do something to, you know, toot our horn?
Yes.
Okay. The last item on our agenda is our standing agenda item covering what we plan to discuss next month. In addition to the items on this list, we'll revisit the work plan and I hope finalize it. And I will commit to sending out tomorrow the updated draft. I added a few items that Christy had suggested putting in there. So I'll send that out, and if everybody would look it over, and you can send your feedback directly to me for any changes that you would suggest or any assignments that you would like to take on or jettison. Just send me your comments and I'll make the changes, and then I'll submit or send you all a final one for review before our meeting in February. We also talked about, Kelly and I think Dick, this is following up on, I think this is following up on that, but the Bell Farm development, having a presentation on that and what their vision is. We'll be talking about the sustainable city plan and time permitting, depending on what other requests we get from committee members before the deadline for submitting items, possible consideration of adding members to this committee. It could happen through like actually expanding the membership, or to welcome in new citizen members, or many of the committees in the city, their charter is, it involves having representatives of other committees on them. That might be one way to go, since there is such a, we want to have a connection to the committees that really we feel need to start embracing sustainability. The ones to whom we want to spread the green, maybe we spread the green by bringing them into us and not necessarily us going to them. So think about other topics that you might want to discuss next month. I don't know if the Brad Hopwood presentation is one. Kelly, your hand's raised.
That was my question. Do you want me to try to secure Brad? I mean, want me to put that
Yep.
on the agenda?
Yep, that would be good. And then those of you working on the subgroups, the fleet, and Spencer, you and I should get in touch about the sustainable purchasing plan and come up with actions for that. And then the Stone Horse Green group, please make sure that you touch base as soon as possible to just make sure we stay on target. Couple reminders, go ahead.
I'm sorry, who was the other ones in the Stone Horse Green group?
Katie, you, and Rick Eilertson. Okay.
I think
I just
Daphne
wanted,
was interested.
Daphne was too? Okay, we
so.
can, yeah. Just a couple of reminders, February 8th, go to the library website and register to attend what will be a really great Sustainable You. The description is on there so you can read it. I passed along to Kelly last week on Friday, this coming Friday, the Midwest, there's going to be a Midwest Climate Summit. You may have seen it in the news. It's hosted by, well, UW-Madison's involved in it as part of the Midwest Climate Collaborative. It's a free event, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Zoom. When I send the work plan tomorrow, I'll include a link to that. And then also, talking about bulbs earlier, I'll include an article, I think it was the New York Times, I can't remember though, but I just read it today, and it was about how the Trump administration's decision to slow down energy efficiency standards has led to dollar stores in particular featuring incandescent bulbs, and therefore costing, the article addressed the disparity in equity for high income and low income residents. So I thought, since we were talking about the bulbs, I would share that article. Okay, is there any other business? If there is none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. I hope you'll have a good rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.